12 years after a 53-year-old Cleveland Clinic nurse was brutally stabbed in broad daylight, the perpetrator was indicted. Aliza Sherman was a mother of 4 from Cleveland, Ohio. She was known for her wit, caretaking nature, and deep connections with friends and neighbors. After nearly 30 years of marriage to Dr. Sanford Sherman, she filed for divorce in 2011. Their marriage was anything but smooth. The police had been called to their residence 22 times between the year 2000 and 2013. There were allegations of infidelity, domestic abuse, and financial misconduct, which led them through a messy divorce. 2 days before the divorce trial was set to begin on March 24, 2013, she went to see her divorce attorney, Gregory Moore. Her attorney contacted her and said that he needed to meet with her. She was waiting for someone to unlock the doors at Moore's office building. She waited for about an hour before she decided to return to her car. As she was on her way to her car, an individual approached her on East 12th Street, circled behind her, chased her, and then fatally stabbed her 11 times. She was stabbed once in the right arm, twice in the neck, and 8 times in the back. An employee working in a building nearby heard her screaming and rushed downstairs, where he found her almost lifeless body on a downtown Cleveland sidewalk. He called 911 and she was rushed to the Metro Health Medical Center, where she was pronounced deceased at 6:14 p.m. Aliza's loved one raised funds for reward money for any information about her tragic end, but there was no luck and the case went cold. Her husband apparently refused to cooperate with the police, and he moved to Florida. Attorney Moore was no stranger to the authorities either. In December 2013, he was indicted for making bomb threats to delay trials in 2012, and in January 2016, he was indicted for obstruction and falsification for lying to the police about his whereabouts during Aliza's attack. In May 2017, he pleaded guilty to the falsification and bomb threat charges. He was sentenced to serve 180 days in jail, 36 months of community control, and 150 hours of court work service. His law license was suspended in 2017, and he resigned the following year. At the time, he said that he regretted his past actions. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation took over the cold case in 2021. Aliza's husband passed away in July 2023 at the age of 68. In May 2025, 51-year-old Moore was arrested by U.S. Marshals in Texas after a county grand jury indicted him on charges of aggravated slaying, 6 counts of slaying, 2 counts of kidnapping, and conspiracy. He has pleaded not guilty. His bond was set at $2 million. The judge also ordered Moore to provide a DNA sample and ordered him not to have any contact with Aliza's family. The Cuyahoga County prosecutor said that Moore planned this crime ahead of time, lied to the police, and hid evidence. The indictment stated that Moore allegedly planned to kidnap Aliza to postpone her divorce trial. Moore was unprepared to try the case, in part because he was handling numerous cases after his law partners at Stafford Law Co. had their licenses suspended. The firm had already billed Aliza $100,000 for the divorce proceedings. Moore was also given control of a mobile broadband Wi-Fi hotspot on the firm's account. That allowed him to message Aliza the day that she lost her life, while his phone was not directly connected to a cell tower, thereby avoiding location evidence, according to the indictment. The unsealed documents include messages between Moore and Aliza showing how he called her to the office, which was locked. At Moore's arraignment, Kevin Filiatrott, the lead assistant county prosecutor on the case, said that people aided Moore in destroying electronic evidence. He said 21 minutes of video footage from the firm's building, which would have captured the crime, went missing. Someone also deleted a voicemail left with the firm by Aliza. That was when she was attacked and stabbed by either Moore or an assailant. Moore swiped into the office later that evening and messaged Aliza to mislead the investigators. Cuyahoga County prosecutors confirmed that Aliza's husband was not suspected of being a co-conspirator in this case. The mother of 4 has been remembered as a beloved fertility nurse. Rallies and vigils to honor her memory have been held on the anniversary of her demise. Her daughter, Jennifer Sherman, thanked the authorities for their unwavering dedication in seeking justice for Aliza. In 2023, Jennifer started the Aliza Sherman Fund, which raises money for Cleveland Clinic patients and caregivers who have experienced violence. The money will also be allocated to introduce programs aimed at prevention and raising awareness. Harry Shin, Aliza's brother, said, "I am in shock because after 12 years, you do not expect it. The best word to sum up my feelings at this point would be bittersweet. Glad they got the person, but the memories are painful." Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Michael O'Malley said in a statement, "The Sherman family has waited over a decade for answers regarding their mother's case. Through the tenacious work of multiple law enforcement agencies, evidence was accumulated that paints the unmistakable picture that Gregory Moore orchestrated and participated in the brutal slaying of Aliza Sherman." Attorney General Dave Yost, whose Bureau of Criminal Investigations took over the case in 2021, previously said that the break in the case came from new analytical tools and maybe fresh eyes. He was reluctant to divulge many details with a likely jury trial looming, but said that much of the investigation focused on messages between Moore and Aliza. On July 3, 2025, Moore posted a $2 million bond, and on July 7th, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Michael O'Malley filed an emergency motion to request GPS monitoring for Moore. Judge Kravash said Moore cannot have firearms or a passport. He is not allowed to travel outside of the state or country. Moore is also restricted from some locations to keep the Sherman family's safety in mind. If he violates any of these, he will be arrested without bond. His trial date is set for March 30th, 2026. Two lovers committed a gruesome crime in 2003 just so that they could be together. It took investigators more than 2 decades to crack the case. David Vanderzee of Randall, Wisconsin, was a Navy veteran. David met his wife, Roxana, online in 2000, and the couple married in 2003. On September 23, 2003, 47-year-old David was found deceased by his wife, Roxana Vanderzee, in their residence in Powers Lake, just 8 weeks after they had gotten married. David lost his life due to 5 gunshot wounds to the back of his head. He was shot execution style. The investigators suspected that David knew his assailant and was not fearful because there was no sign of either forced entry or a struggle. On the night David was shot, Roxana claimed that she got off work at 5:45 p.m. and went shopping in Gurnee before she returned home at 8 p.m. to find her husband lying lifeless in a pool of blood. At the time, Roxana was allegedly having an affair with John Viscasil. She reportedly had moved in with John only weeks after her husband was found deceased in his home. John and David were reportedly close friends. During the 2003 investigation, John told the police that he visited David around 2 p.m. the day of the crime, but went home, covered his boat, and went fishing on Powers Lake from 6 until 8 p.m. After searching John's home, the investigators also seized multiple .38 caliber revolvers and boxes of matching ammunition from John's home in the weeks after the shooting. While the weapon used in the shooting was never recovered, the investigators said that bullet fragments were consistent with firearms previously owned by John. David's case went cold, as there was not enough evidence to arrest Roxana and John as suspects at the time. The case remained cold until more than 2 decades later, in 2025, when new statements from a former girlfriend of John's cast doubt on his original alibi. John claimed that he had been fishing from his boat by himself the evening in question, an activity that his then-girlfriend said was odd and out of character. She also noted that when John returned from his purported fishing trip, he immediately put the clothes he had been wearing into the washer. John later claimed to the investigators that he did so because he had fallen into the lake and needed to change. His girlfriend does not recall him coming home wet, and certainly does not remember making a fuss over a wet mess, as John initially claimed shortly after the shooting. Kenosha County District Attorney Xavier Solis said reopening the case was a priority for his office. On May 28, 2025, 70-year-old Roxana Collins of McHenry, Illinois, was taken into custody regarding an arrest warrant for first-degree intentional slaying, as a party to a crime and use of a dangerous weapon. She was being held in the McHenry County Jail with a $75,000 cash bond pending extradition to Wisconsin. On the same day, 70-year-old John J. Viscasil of Genoa City was also taken into custody regarding an arrest warrant for first-degree intentional slaying as a party to a crime and use of a dangerous weapon. He is being held in the Kenosha County Jail with a $500,000 cash bond. The authorities said that the arrests were the result of continued diligent detective work and investigation. Court records showed that Roxana was freed from the Kenosha County Jail at 6:49 p.m. on June 3rd after paying the court-imposed bail. If the pair is convicted, they face life in prison. If you have additional information on this case, please contact the Kenosha County Sheriff's Office Detective Bureau at 262-605-5102. The police have finally solved a 1980 Massachusetts cold case after an innocent person spent almost 20 years in prison for something he did not do. Genetic testing finally led to the real perpetrator being identified. Katharina Reitz was a 48-year-old woman who was slain in her Ayer, Massachusetts, trailer home on May 21, 1980. That morning, her husband left for work at around 7:10 a.m., and she was found deceased at 10:45 a.m. She had been struck repeatedly with a blunt object, and she was stabbed 30 times. 5 of those stab wounds penetrated her heart. Inside the home, there were signs of a struggle. Her purse, some jewelry, and a large sum of money she kept in the linen closet was also missing. The crime scene investigators recovered hairs, blood, and fingerprints in the house as evidence that they believed belonged to the attacker. The investigators also found the knife that was used to stab her in a wastebasket. Kenneth Waters became a suspect because he lived next to Katharina with his girlfriend, Brenda Marsh. He worked as a chef at the Park Street Diner in Ayer, Massachusetts, where Katharina was a frequent customer. It was apparently known to the diner employees that Katharina kept a large amount of cash in her home. Kenneth was questioned by the police and provided a strong alibi that he had worked until 8:30 a.m. on that day, and a co-worker had driven him home. He changed clothes and had been in the Ayer courthouse for a 9 a.m. appearance with his attorney. He said he left the courthouse after 11 a.m. and returned to the diner, where he stayed until 12:30 p.m. The officers examined his clothes and body and did not see any apparent blood stains or cuts. He was fingerprinted and questioned further, but not charged. The case remained open for more than 2 years. Then in October 1982, Kenneth's then ex-girlfriend Brenda was dating a man named Robert Osborne. Robert went to the Ayer Police Department and allegedly offered to provide information on the case in exchange for money. Robert said that Brenda told him how Kenneth confessed to her that he had slain a woman. The officers then interrogated Brenda and purportedly threatened to charge her as an accessory and take away her children if she did not corroborate Robert's claim. She initially refused, saying Robert's statements were untrue. Eventually, however, she agreed to cooperate, and she told the police that Kenneth had returned home on the morning of May 21st with a long, deep scratch on his face. Rosanna Perry, another former girlfriend of Kenneth, also initially told the police that she had no information about the crime, but after more than 3 hours of interrogation and threats of arrest, she told them that he had said something about stabbing a woman and stealing her money and jewelry. Based on these statements alone, Kenneth was arrested and charged, even though none of the evidence linked him to the case. His trial began in May 1983. A forensic analyst testified that none of the 3 hairs collected from the crime scene, one of them being from Katharina's hand and another one from the knife, did not match Katharina or Kenneth. Kenneth was convicted on May 11th and was sentenced to life in prison. He appealed his conviction several times between 1983 and 1999, but they were all denied, even though Rosanna Perry recanted her trial testimony that said Kenneth had admitted guilt. After Kenneth's conviction, his sister, Betty Ann Waters, sought to prove his innocence. She put herself through college and law school, all with the goal of exonerating her brother. In 1999, she located the blood evidence collected from the scene of the crime and obtained a court order to preserve the evidence for possible DNA testing. In 2000, she began working with the Innocence Project on the case. Together, she and the Innocence Project reached an agreement with the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office to allow a private lab to conduct DNA testing on the evidence. The results excluded Kenneth, proving that he was not the attacker. His conviction was vacated soon after. He was released from prison after spending nearly 18 years for a crime he did not commit. A reinvestigation was led by a state police officer who found the police reports to be incomplete and contacted Ayer police officers who had been involved in the original investigation. At this point, for the first time, the police turned over complete records from the case, including a police report confirming Kenneth's work schedule and extensive documentation on the fingerprint evidence that had been collected before trial. On March 15, 2001, the district attorney's office dropped all charges against Kenneth and his exoneration became official. Sadly, Kenneth could not enjoy his freedom for very long. He passed away in a tragic accident on September 19th, only 6 months after he was released from prison. He was 47 years old. His sister reflected on her brother's life after his exoneration, saying, "Kenny had the best 6 months of his life. After so many years behind bars, the world was new to him." More than 2 decades later, in 2022, the cold case unit of the Middlesex District Attorney's Office used forensic investigative genetic genealogy to identify the man who had actually left his blood at the crime scene. Working with forensic chemists at Parabon Nanolabs, the investigators were able to isolate a genetic line that identified 2 potential suspects who were brothers. Both were deceased. The investigators tracked down 2 living relatives of those brothers who agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Scientists were then able to pinpoint Joseph Leo Boudreau as the likely culprit. He was 37 years old at the time of the crime and passed away in 2004 at the age of 61. Boudreau was born in Natick in 1943. He worked in Framingham and was convicted of armed robbery in New Hampshire in 1975. In 1987, he moved to Maine, where he lived until he passed away. On June 15, 2025, 45 years after the crime took place, District Attorney Marion Ryan said, "No matter how much time passes, our priority remains the same: to seek answers." In this case, that meant identifying the person responsible for Mrs. Brau's demise, even though they could no longer be held accountable through the criminal system. Today, we are able to name her perpetrator and provide long overdue clarity to her family. Ayer Police Chief Brian Gill added, "The investigative breakthrough came when forensic investigative genetic genealogy DNA testing was applied to evidence recovered at the scene. This ultimately led us to today's announcement. I am thankful that we may be able to finally bring some closure to the Brau family and a measure of justice for Katharina." A man who took the lives of 2 family members in 1992 in China remained free for 3 decades. On July 22, 1992, a perpetrator used a kitchen knife to fatally stab a mother and a 17-year-old girl at their home in a village in Huaiyuan County in southwestern China's Sichuan province. The 17-year-old girl's boyfriend and the son of the mother, surnamed Li, who was 29 years old, fled the country. Because of the limitations in communications and technology, the police were unable to find any critical leads to where he is, and the case went cold. Upon reviewing the case in 2024, more than 3 decades later, the investigators unexpectedly discovered that Li's elder brother's wife had mysteriously disappeared 2 months after Li fled the country. His brother did not report her missing to the police, as the couple had a troubled relationship. A rumor circulating widely in the village suggested that the sister-in-law, surnamed Gu, had previously had an affair with Li, which drew the attention of the police. While the officers were investigating Gu's family, they learned that she had visited them in 2013. Gu had a son and a daughter, but they did not know where she lived. The police managed to locate the mobile number Gu once used. After tracing the number, the officers deduced that Gu likely lived in Jiangmen, Guangdong province in southern China. A road surveillance camera image from the city captured a woman on a pedicab who bore a strong resemblance to Gu. After following the trail of the pedicab, the officers arrived in a small hamlet in suburban Jiangmen, where the villagers reported that the woman in the photo shown by the police and her husband, both speaking with a Sichuan accent, had lived there for about 30 years, raising a son and a daughter. The husband was believed to be Lee. An officer posing as a customer approached the woman's husband at a construction site where he worked. The officer secretly collected a cigarette butt discarded by Lee and sent it for DNA testing, which confirmed his identity. After 32 years, Lee was arrested in September 2024. In 2025, Lee confessed to the police that he had ended the lives of his then-girlfriend after she demanded a large sum of money from his mother, threatening to end their relationship if her request was not met. He said that he accidentally stabbed his mother while trying to stab his girlfriend. Lee told the police, "I was exhausted while on the run. I lost track of how many years had passed and even forgot my ID number and my original name." He added, "Life has been difficult for me over the years. You finally came. I am relieved to leave this life behind." Lee said after the double stabbing, he hid in a nearby mountain for 2 months, during which Gu frequently brought him food and clothing. When he proposed that they elope, she agreed without hesitation. Lee has been charged with intentionally ending someone's life, and a verdict has yet to be reached. It remains unclear whether Gu will face any consequences. An Indian policeman has apparently solved a case 49 years after the crime was committed because the alleged perpetrator made the mistake of returning to his village at the wrong time. On September 14, 1973, the police were informed about a foul smell in the neighborhood of Saijpur, Ahmedabad in India. When the officers arrived, the house was locked. When they gained access to the house, they found 70-year-old Mani Shukla deceased inside her home. Further investigation into the case revealed that 3 days before Mani lost her life, a 27-year-old man named Sitaram Bhatane, who used to live there with his 2 brothers, was seen entering Mani's house at night, after which the house was locked from the outside. Items were stolen from the home, even utensils. The stolen items led the police to believe it was a robbery gone wrong. The police tried searching for Sitaram, but he fled the city and could not be traced, and the case went cold for many years. The case was reopened on August 14, 2013, 4 decades later, when a metropolitan magistrate issued a warrant for Sitaram Bhatane's arrest. As the case was not a high-profile one, the investigators remained passive in their search for him. Each year, the police went to his village hundreds of miles away, but he was never there. Then, for an election in December 2022, another 9 years later, an inspector asked the officers to round up various criminals, and they happened to find a limping, balding, hard-of-hearing Bhatane. A police team went there and questioned him, where he confessed to ending the life of Mani. He revealed that he went to Mani's house while she was sleeping, as he needed money. While he was stealing things from the house, she woke up and tried to stop him. A combat ensued between the two and the woman fell, after which Bhatane left her and ran away. The investigators took the 73-year-old into custody and brought him to the police station, where the case had been registered in 1973. It was revealed in the investigation that the 3 brothers, Bhatane, Mahadev, and Narayan, used to live on the floor above Mani's floor. In 2025, a FIR was filed against Bhatane under Indian Penal Code sections 302, punishment for ending someone's life, and 392, punishment for robbery. The FIR was filed by V.S. Sethi, the then inspector of Sardarnagar police station. Inspector Gohil said that when Bhatane is sentenced, he is likely to spend the rest of his life behind bars, and the old man is resigned to that fate.